Goedemiddag. Oh, wait. Today's session is in English.
English.
Good
Switch it up.
afternoon.
How are you,
Diego,
Rajiv? How are you?
I'm fine. I'm so happy to have you in this episode.
Well, technically, I was in the other episode too. I was in the back end.
That's
But
true.
our last episode was last Tuesday, and that was on, for the people who missed it, um, on the search program that the Ministry of Trade uh, has, and Innovation and Trade, right? Correct me if I'm wrong,
Yeah.
Rajiv. And so if you missed that one, definitely check that out, especially if you have a business, because there is, in amidst words, some technically, in quotation marks, free money that you could apply for.
Yes, in quote unquote free money, or well, it's not really free money, but nowadays, if you want to grow your business, you need access to capital. And what better way to make that happen with this program? There are some hoops that you have to jump across, but it's very simple. And if you're really do you have a business and you want to scale up or you want to expand, etc., it's definitely worth the chance. So Diego, I'm happy that you also checked out the search episode from last time.
Yeah.
But what are we going to do today?
So today is our like regular Thursday. So just for everyone just tuning in, these sessions will be on the Thursdays. The plan is to have them bi-weekly, so 2 a month, and we're gonna cover a wide variety of topics just to inform our ecosystem on the different opportunities, give them new insights. But today's topic is on bioeconomy, and I
Wait,
haven't
wait,
been.
wait, wait. Before you go that direction, Diego, if there's anyone watching, and I see that you guys are, let us know in the comments. Yeah, because we don't want to feel that we're just talking to ourselves. Let us know in the comments and say hi. This is the chance. And if you have questions, definitely feel free to already put them up. And so coming back to your topic, Diego,
Yeah,
but I think the next slide will be helpful, right?
yeah. So we're gonna cover bioeconomy today, but before we go deeper into that, I think this slide needs a little elaboration because, as you know, the mission of Silicon Dorp is to expose talent to a world-class innovation ecosystem, and we're basing this on like four primary sustainable economy verticals, as you see on the screen. So if you could briefly elaborate on the four of them and how bioeconomy kind of fits into this, and we'll also learn from the expert that we're going to bring on in a momentarily.
Before I do that, just showing love to everyone's watching. Nice to have you here with us, Mike. Also, Daphne, so nice to have you with us. Definitely looking forward to your questions. And circling back to this point. So, as Silicon Dorp, we strive to create an innovation ecosystem for Suriname. Well, we strive to make it more healthy, and we're doing the kickoff. But eventually, we hope that every citizen wants to adopt that philosophy and adds their value, right? And then, but we realized that okay, we want to through the innovation ecosystem, want to sustainably develop Suriname. How do we do that? So we looked at the economy, and we've seen that we've had our economy is mostly based on industries that are of diminishing returns. In Dutch, you say uitputtende industrie, the mining, oil and gas, etc. It dries up. It doesn't renew itself. So then we looked at the concept of industries of increasing returns, more sustainable. And from our side, we think we did a SWOT analysis, and we think there's a strong potential as to create an economic vertical based on our strengths and opportunity for ICT and outsourcing. We think also that arts, culture, and fashion is an interesting vertical for us because we have so many creative people, we have a rich history, and yeah, we can combine it. to an interesting product. But also, we are 90% forested. So why isn't ecotourism something for us? Isn't green pharmacy something for us? And we've put an asterisk on agriculture, but that's because agriculture is it's continuously also renewing, and it's going from less output to also increasing returns, a bit more sustainable. So the big question for us is bioeconomy possibly something that would be a vertical, economic vertical for Suriname, of a sustainable vertical for Suriname. And that's why we asked a special guest, a special host, a special guest, and let's introduce her, Diego.
Hello, Tatiana. Welcome.
Thank you, Hajib. Thank you, Diego. Hello, Suriname.
Hello. Thank you, Tatiana. So Tatiana is the head of the Amazon unit at IDB. Did I say that correctly, or should I say chief?
Doesn't matter.
So Tatiana, you're calling all the way from Washington. So thankful that you made time in your busy schedule to talk to us about this concept of bioeconomy that for a couple of months ago I was totally not familiar with. I heard about it, but never really familiar with. So before we go in that direction, tell us a bit about you, Tatiana. Who are you? Tell us something not a lot of people know, and then yeah, you may go ahead.
Okay, well, it's a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited for this conversation. I like Suriname a lot. I'm Brazilian, so I come from the Brazilian Amazon. I come from Manaus, and I'm a professor at the Federal University of Amazonas. I'm a geography professor. And I am now the chief of the Amazon Coordination Unit in IDB. IDB is the Inter-American Development Bank, which is a bank, which is a cooperative bank for Latin America and the Caribbean. And I coordinate the Amazon Initiative, which is an initiative inside the bank that looks at the Amazon region as a whole. So we're looking at the whole of the Amazon territory. And I say whole because if we look at the extension of the Amazon territory, we're like the sixth largest country in the world if we were a country, if the whole of the Amazon were a country. And it's interesting because in each of the 8 Amazonian countries, so we consider Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Guyana, and Suriname as countries, because the French territory is a French territory, it's not a country. So of the 8 Amazonian countries which are part of the initiative, Amazonian area, Amazon region in each of the countries vary a lot. And in Suriname, we consider 100% of the country Amazonian, inclusively the mangroves. So Suriname is a place we have a special look at. So it's very, very important to talk to Suriname. It's very important to talk to the young, innovative area ecosystem in Suriname so that we can build possible answers together. I won't have all the answers, but I want to have the dialogue. I think the important thing is to provoke Suriname innovative and young ecosystem to start talking about bioeconomy.
And I think this is the perfect place to do it as well, as we are trying to, develop this ecosystem as well. But to kick it off in the aspect of bioeconomy, could you briefly explain in simple terms, what it is and why does it matter? And then we can kind of look at it from a Suriname's perspective where we are.
Okay, that sounds very good. Thank you, Diego. To start with, and it's very important, bioeconomy for me, it's like a dispute of a narrative. So when we start talking about bioeconomy, what are we talking about? Exactly what are we talking about? And it's important for us to have it clear. And it's very important for Suriname to understand what bioeconomy is for the country and what bioeconomy is as a possible and important development economic program, right? So I'm going to tell you a little bit how I understand bioeconomy and how we work with bioeconomy. And maybe with that, we can start a conversation in Suriname and how Suriname understands bioeconomy and what is the narrative Suriname is going to build on bioeconomy. So to start with, I divide and we think bioeconomy in 3 scales. So there's the first scale of bioeconomy, which is the bioeconomy of the social biodiversity. So bioeconomy of social biodiversity is very much linked with the traditional populations in the Amazon, be them indigenous, be them Ribeirinhos, be them Maroons, you know, be them Afro-descendants of different areas. And this bioeconomy done by traditional people is nothing new. It's something we've been doing in the Amazon ever since, which is the relationship between the production and nature. And it's very interesting to separate the bioeconomy of the social biodiversity, because when we start talking about bioeconomy of social biodiversity, it implies that we have to have special care, because we're talking to traditional populations which have a different time set, which have specific cultures, which have determinate land tenure processes, which understand nature in a different form. So when we start talking about scaling products in bioeconomy, we have to have a lot of care, because we don't want to impose a mechanism, a market mechanism on traditional populations, because that can impact their way of life. But at the same time, we understand that bioeconomy of the social biodiversity is a mechanism not only of economic progress for the communities and the population, but also, and very important, of territorial governance. So if the traditional populations can make use of their natural resources under their definition, under their terms, it is a way they can actively control their territory towards a market structure which makes sense in their culture. So this is very important. The second scale of bioeconomy is what I call the bioeconomy of imperfect markets, which is a bioeconomy which isn't totally modernized. So we don't have like a logical value chain, because when we say value chain, we understand everything is organized in a way that the industry or the modern markets will understand, but it's much more like a network of productive knowledge. So the way the market is structured depends very much on personal knowledge of how the market works. So the bioeconomy of imperfect markets is very much a bioeconomy which the Amazon regions have been doing ever since. So it's the exploitation of natural resources, not by the traditional people, but people that are in the region for many, many years, which are markets which we don't have all of the information of how it works. So a lot of the extractivism markets that we have today enter this category of imperfect markets. The third scale of a bioeconomy is the bioeconomy of commodities. And this bioeconomy of commodities, we can separate it in 2 areas. The first area of bioeconomy of commodity is this agriculture without the asterisks, right, Rajiv? It's like this monoculture or cattle growing or soybeans or corn, which happen in the Amazon region all over. And the great challenge is to bring this bioeconomy of agricultural and cattle market into a more sustainable, into a more cooperative, into a more interesting dialogue with the other sectors of bioeconomy. And still in the bioeconomy of commodities, we can look at the bioeconomy of innovation. And that is very interesting, because I think there's an area we could exploit a lot. We could think on it a lot. So what is the bioeconomy of innovations? It means us looking at the different possibilities of innovating in biomaterials, innovating in what we call the creative economy, the different forms of tourism, for example. It means also innovating in other areas of the creative economy and of high technology science that we haven't really been exploring a lot. I understand it's very important for an innovation ecosystem to think about that. So how can the different areas in the innovation ecosystem look at the forest, look at the possibilities from the forest, look at how the other sectors of bioeconomy are working in the forest, and how can they interact? How can we look into the bioeconomy of the social biodiversity and innovate with them? How can we look at in the bioeconomy of imperfect markets and bring innovation to these imperfect markets? How can we look at the bioeconomy of commodities, the agriculture, the monocultures, and bring also possibility of sustainability, traceability, alignment with the Paris Agreement, alignment with climate change? And there's a lot of space for us to think about that. And there's a lot of space for technology to be an important partner in the development of bioeconomy in the countries. So we have these three bioeconomy scales. Let's call it as scales. But they're not totally separated. So that's the interesting part of it. So if you get some examples, I'll give you a simple example. Açaí, right? Which is very strong in Brazil. So we have açaí in the bioeconomy of the social biodiversity. So we have a big extractivism açaí linked to protected areas of indigenous populations, açaí that comes from different areas. So it's an açaí, and it's interesting açaí because we have two plants of açaí. We have a plant from açaí which is closer to Belém, Pará, and the other a plant of açaí which is in the other side of the Amazon. And there are many lineages of açaí. So the açaí from the social biodiversity is a very biodiverse açaí, and it has all its complexities. And then we have açaís of imperfect markets, which are the ribeirinhos, which are little farms or production of açaí in a little higher scale, but not industrialized yet. And we have açaí of commodities, which is the açaí, which is monoculture of açaí, only one species, totally monoculture of açaí. So we have the same product in the three areas. And then when we look at the innovation side of the bioeconomy, we start asking ourselves, well, maybe the açaí that is from the social biodiversity is so diverse that it shouldn't go in the same bag as the açaí from a monoculture. Maybe the açaí, and science has shown that the açaí from the bioeconomy of social biodiversity is very rich in other micronutrients. It's very interesting for the pharmaceutical industry. The monoculture açaí is very interesting for food because it's fattier. So we can have different things. And there are studies of how you use the seed of the açaí for important products. And then there's how can we help the market structure itself? And so we can think of each of these scales together. And what is important, in my opinion? Now, what is happening today on the ground? Today on the ground, we have a lot of conflict in the Amazon. And a lot of this conflict is due to competitiveness between the bioeconomy scales, especially competitiveness to access to land and access to the natural resources. And sometimes, and many times, these conflicts are violent. So what we have to start thinking is, how can we make the competition between the different spheres of bioeconomy be more collaborative? How can we think in different ways of organizing the three? Because we're not judging which scale is better than the other. We're recognizing that there are three scales. And then when we recognize that there are three scales or three bioeconomy definitions, that means we have to do different public policies. We have to look at them differently. And when we look at them differently, we have to ask ourselves, what can be collaboration between them? And in Suriname, that's very interesting. I'm not a specialist in Suriname. I know Suriname. I like Suriname a lot. I had the opportunity with the IDB office, because IDB is a multilateral bank, which has a very strong, a very interesting office with very good technical personnel from Suriname in the office, and also internationals in the office. So I had the opportunity to go to the office and learn a lot about Suriname from the Surinamese, and to travel up the Suriname River and get to know Maroon communities and see the enormous potential of integrating bioeconomy into the economic discourse of the country. I'll give a quick example which called a lot of my attention, which is the oils, the palm tree oils. Coconut oil and other oils that we found in Aya. I don't know how, there's a different name, I'm sorry, in Suriname, because this is the difficult thing about the Amazon. The same plants have different names in different regions, but they're very well done. They're very good, you know, so we could start looking at that and see what's the potential of that in the area. And there's a lot of challenges, as all the countries have challenges. But I think it's very, very important. This is the last thing I'm going to say, so Rajiv and Diego can ask me more questions. I think it's very important, and it can be a very important role for the innovation ecosystem, for the young people in Suriname, to start positioning themselves, start learning more about what is bioeconomy, what are challenges, how to look into the forest and the enormous potential Suriname has in a more innovative way. You can do a lot. And we as a development bank, we're ready to listen and to understand and to think together.
So just I've written down 4 pieces of paper. I feel that I got how do you say it, a quick crash course on bioeconomy. So just putting it in a summary for all the listeners. So basically, the bioeconomy, when you talk about bioeconomy, you basically have to start with a perspectives or analysis. So there's one scale. Well, there are 3 scales. First one is the social biodiversity perspective. I'll call it a perspective. But it's really just a category. But then there's also the bioeconomy of imperfect market. And lastly, is the bioeconomy for commodities. That's what you mentioned. It's more monoculture, etc. And then you introduce the concept of bioeconomy of innovation. And that, in my own words, is basically a success formula almost for innovation, for, using for translating it into a sustainable vertical. That's how I translate it for me. Diego, let me know if I'm still well.
Yeah, no, your audio is pretty good.
Yeah.
So keep going.
So the immediate question that popped up was, so if you want to apply the success formula of bioeconomy of innovation, what is your first step? How do you choose your product? How do you choose your value chain?
Mm-hmm.
How would we go about it? You mentioned example, but maybe if you can break it down for us. How would we choose one?
Good. Okay, very good, Rajiv. Very good. Well, first thing, let's not talk about value chains, because then it gives us more complexity. And I think it's complex. I think we have a complex economy, not a simple economy. So let's talk about productive knowledge network. So when we start talking about productive knowledge network, we have 3 very important words. One is network. So you have to identify the network. And your best instrument of all is this one here, which is the ear. You have to listen. You have to listen to the people who are working in whatever you're interested in. So listen, just listen and understand how the network is organized. And it's a knowledge network. What does it mean it's a knowledge network? It means that knowledge is one of the central points. Who knows what where? And what type of knowledge is that? So there's a productive knowledge. So probably the people that produce have the productive knowledge. Then there's the market knowledge. And that's probably other people that have the market knowledge. And then there's the academic knowledge. And probably, I'm not knowledgeable of Suriname. There's a lot of knowledge in Suriname. Even though sometimes we think our countries don't have knowledge, they have. You know, We have a lot of people who know a lot of things. If they don't know, they know where to put you, right? And then there's the productive part. And this is where it gets interesting. So usually when we look at this productive knowledge networks, we tend to not understand the production processes of what we're looking at, because it's very complex. And it's very complex because it's still not linear. That's why I don't like value chains, because when we say value chains, we're thinking of a linear structure. We're not thinking about a linear structure. And the production can have different moments in the network. And this is like, this is for me, it works basically as how I'm gonna map what I'm looking at. So if I'm interested in, let's talk again about coconut oil, which Suriname produces a good amount. And it's a production, I might be wrong, but I've seen a lot along the maroon communities in Suriname River. And if you go to the market in Suriname, it's being sold in various forms. So the question would be, okay, can I map out who are producing? What is the market structure? How does this oil get into this market? What are the possibilities of this oil market in internal and external markets? Who else is doing coconut oil around the world? Who knows more about coconut oil in Suriname? Who has been working with this? Who has been studying in Suriname or abroad the potentials of coconut oil? Coconut oil can be used for cooking, for hair, for body, cosmetics. Now let's call it for cooking, for cosmetics, and it can be used in other industries. The oil we produce in Suriname is good for what? Where will we have more aggregated value? And then you start asking yourself. And then you start looking at what you see at this network, and you say, okay, I can see this network. Where is the point, the area that if I think of an innovation in that area, I will impact the network? And that's your strategy, because we won't have enough resources to do everything. So where will we choose what to do? And with whom? Who has which knowledge, which production, and which part of the network should innovation come in to be disruptive in a positive way? I think that's very interesting. So this could be a way. But also, just to change the example so that we are not only looking into direct forest products, which is important, I think it's important, but also the knowledge in Suriname. I think I'm not sure of what exists in Suriname in terms of technological, digital knowledge. How many startups do you have in terms of producing games, visual, audio, I know I got to hear some very interesting music in Suriname, which we don't find it in Spotify, and that's very interesting. The creative economy as a whole is a very important economy for the world. And I think Suriname doesn't exploit, it doesn't really value its different culture, especially for Latin America, and its specificity. And I imagine there's a lot of interesting, innovative perspective for creative economy from the forest, for creative economy from Amazonia. So I don't know if I answered you, but
I have a follow-up. No, thank you for sharing that, because the part where I'm stuck and I'm automatically the monetizing hat comes into play. When you select a product, don't you have to also take into consideration the world demand for it?
If you want to access the world markets, because you can decide to look at internal markets. To start with, and I think that could be something, or internal or regional markets. Let's be, and it's that's important. I think for Suriname, that's very important.
And the reason I bring this up is because, first of all, we've always strived to, there's a Dutch saying, 𝗜𝗍, that's basically foreign
Yeah, foreign
capital.
capital.
And we have limited amount of foreign capital.
Mm-hmm.
And we're so focused on that. But we're using a lot of it, and it's depleting. And I've been taught in the school, etc., that we need to produce and export to gain more foreign capital and to have better control of that asset. So that's why I'm asking that question in that light. But I'm almost answering myself. But do let me know if it's also a way of looking at it, or when selecting your product. Do you look at the regional demand because you want to gain foreign capital through export, or do you also choose your product because you also want to, instead of importing it, you want to produce it locally? Is that a way of looking at it as well?
I think what you're gonna have to think is, again, you have to analyze your network, and the analysis has to be on your capacity of being innovative, because it's an innovative ecosystem. I would add being impactful. I think what we need in Suriname is impact, social impact. We need enterprises with social impact. We need innovation with social impact. And if the product you choose, if the project you look at, you can see a possibility of innovation and having social impact with exportation, then you look at the markets. Or if you understand you can start with a local national market, or you start with the national market. Because sometimes we want to export too quickly. And then with the exportation too quickly, we tend to, and I say we because I'm Amazonian also, so we tend to export without aggregating value in our countries and without being impactful in our countries.
Very good point.
So I wouldn't say, well, export crude coconut oil. I would say no. Let's do something else. Let's try and getting the production of coconut oil better in the country, better quality, better marketing. And then let's choose some markets to start exporting. And exportation doesn't necessarily have to be to Europe or to the United States. It can be to Brazil, for example. You can, and then you have to play a little bit with what is innovation? We could start the discussion. What is innovation? You have to look in between the cracks. Rajiv, you have to look in between the cracks. There's a term in Amazonian Portuguese, which is 𝗜়្�χ, because when the houses of wood, when the wood dries, it leaves these little cracks. We call it brecha in Portuguese, in Amazonian Portuguese. And 𝗜়្�χ means, like spying on someone from the cracks. So you have to 𝗜̑ြ the network and try, that's innovation, and try to see what other people don't see. Because if we're going to do the same thing the other industries are doing, the other ecosystems are doing, why are we calling us innovation ecosystem? And I think the good thing today about innovation ecosystems is that we have a lot of young people. And young people tend to, especially, and that's the importance of university, it's very important. Education, higher education is very important. Is that will open your ability to look at things differently. And I think this is the big challenge in bioeconomy. How do we look at economy in a different perspective? Because or else we're going to be doing bioeconomy since the colonial times. That's what we've always done in Amazonia, in Brazil, since the 1500s, So how can we do something different for ourselves, for our country, for our people?
No, I definitely agree. Like the innovation part is very key in all this. And if I go back to the three um, layers that you mentioned, especially I love the example when you mentioned like the traditional layer, like acai from a certain region, like could be more nutritious, but as they scale up in the layers, it kind of loses like the I'll call it the bio value as the richness as it becomes more a commodity. And I see there the gap in innovation to look and how can you maintain the original from the traditional side, like the original richness and value of that, uh, and scale it. And I think that's a gap, or as you mentioned, the I forgot the Portuguese word to
Brecha,
use,
a
brecha.
brecha, yeah.
Yeah, and that's where yeah, the young entrepreneurs, the young people could look at to tackle that. So this brings me to a follow-up question. You mentioned one of the biggest challenges is getting that people to get interested in that and getting educated on that. So what do you feel from like from your perspective is the reason people are not interested, or how can we incentivize them to look more into that or like get more invested into that?
No, good. I think it's a big challenge now, especially I think Suriname has a challenge a bit for you younger people to believe in the country. We tend to think that everything abroad is better than what we have, and I don't think so. I think there's not only an interesting potential, but there's also an interesting moment in terms of ability for the innovation ecosystem in Suriname. So I like the idea that you start strengthening an innovation ecosystem, and with this innovation ecosystem, connecting with the other innovations ecosystems in the region. So that's a way we start not only looking at what we're accustomed to look at. Oh, so let's go abroad and do our university abroad. Let's go abroad. Let's look at markets abroad. Let's, a little bit look into the country and look into yourselves and say, okay, how can we make a difference? And to make a difference, it's not quick. It's not something you're going to solve tomorrow. It's a life project, and you have to be persistent. And you have to another word in Portuguese we use a lot is you have to samba. Samba, samba the music. So when you say you have to jiggle around a lot, you have to samba. You have to jiggle around a lot. And things like this, what you're doing, I think it's fantastic that you have a program like every 2 Thursdays where you're bringing people from different areas, which, like me, I don't know, I know very little of Suriname, right? I'm learning Suriname, to talk about the country, because sometimes when people that aren't from the country, we can see all the potential that you have in the country, and I think that's very important. And for surely, you need really to understand your country, really to go out, and listen and talk to the people and understand it, and from that you can build the possibilities of investment with impact, the possibilities of innovating without a negative disruption, but an innovation which takes into account culture, which takes into account the environment, which takes into account the future and the past. And I think that's very important, that this ecosystem, this Innovate Sranan, it's like a seed. If you start just growing and meeting more and having more time together to make some discussions, I think you have a good way of doing it. And then when you're minimally strong, you can there's a lot of possibilities of investment and money, especially if you have an impactful project and an impactful group, which together they can scale up, because not one individually can scale up. We need more people into the ecosystem. I think that's very important.
And okay, Diego, did you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I did, but if you have one here, you can go ahead too.
Well, I just wanted to make note that we've passed the 40-minute mark,
Oh,
and
okay.
yeah, we're having fun, right?
Yeah,
And
very
I
good.
also, Diego, did you see something interesting in the background?
Yeah, the book there, the tree,
Yes,
and
the tree. I Well, I'm not sure about the basket, but definitely the tree. That's it's in our interior, right?
I was trying to place it, but I wasn't 100% sure. So maybe Tatiana can tell us where that's from.
In my back?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, that's very so. The basket is from Rio Negro in São Gabriel da Cachoeira. The tree is from Brazil also, but this picture here, let me show it better. It's from an Amazonian artist from Peru, Rember. It's a beautiful picture, and it's a drawing. He's an artist from Amazonia also, and I have my Suriname. What I brought from Suriname is at my house.
Oh, okay,
Because
okay.
they're very precious for me, and I do hope that the next time I'm in Suriname, we can make a conversation in person with the ecosystem. I think it would be very interesting for us to get together so that we can explore with more time and talk, and I can hear from you because I've been talking and I'm really wanting to ask a lot of questions. I know we don't have time, but the next time I'm the one who's going to make the questions because I want to understand a little bit more this ecosystem in Suriname.
Tatiana, we still have some time though. We still have 10 to 15 minutes, but we
Okay.
have to go to the questions. So Diego,
Yeah, I have one. Like I had one follow up. Then we can go to the comments. The follow I actually have two now, but the initial follow up was assuming we have identified, we listened, we have identified an industry. You talked about many possibilities to scale up with investment. Could you maybe elaborate on, from an IDB perspective, how entrepreneurs can approach that from a tactical, practical approach to get those investments and map that out to actually impact the community?
Well, IDB works very closely to the government and in thinking about what is our role. Now, we have a very strong role in being able to strengthen the infrastructure of the country because it's the base, you know. And we have a very important also role in terms of strengthening regulations, legislation, so that we can make for example, the innovation ecosystem viable. So this is important. This is not less, right? And at the same time, we have some alternatives in terms of some projects, especially because IDB it's a group. So we have the public IDB, we have the private IDB, and we have the IDB lab. The IDB lab has the possibilities of working with innovative projects. We have one in Suriname, at least one. Maybe there are more, but at least one that comes into my mind, which is called 𝗜𝗲. You should talk to 𝗜𝗲, which is our technical specialist in IDB of the country offices, and she's the lead. She's the person in charge of 𝗜𝗲, and she knows it very well. It's a project which is related to the exploitation of forest products, especially wood, because Suriname is an exporter of logs, and how can we make it more than just exporting logs, but how can we aggregate value, and how can we think about different ways of producing important and interesting products from logs. The Amazon initiative, I don't know if I got the opportunity to talk to you about that. The Amazon, we work with 4 thematic areas, which could be interesting to look at. Bioeconomy, agricultural and sustainable cattle. We look at also cities and infrastructure. We've talked a lot about bioeconomy, but we haven't talked about the possibilities of innovation in infrastructure, energy transition, um, and areas which are important for the well-being of lives in Suriname and human capital. And so, and we have around the Amazon region some very interesting projects. We could talk about that on human capital in innovation ecosystems, which could be an example of how to work in Suriname. So one of them, which we're working on now, also with IDB Lab, which is it's much more our faith in the innovation part, is with the Impact Hub of Manaus. And I don't know if you guys know the Impact Hub. It's like an international impact network, which could be interesting for you to look. So we can also make you like help get into the networks. I think that would be very interesting.
So just to summarize from what I'm hearing, entrepreneurs or people, innovators could, if they have an amazing idea, project, and a plan, of course, they could approach the IDB and actually leverage the network the IDB has, and also to introduce policy to the government and leverage that if they want to impact the community. So that would be.
But even, Diego, even if we can't leverage, we can surely put you in the network who can. I think that's also an important role that we have in Suriname. And that's why I started saying that what is important, what is interesting about IDB is that we have a country office. So you're talking from me from DC, but you have like, I mean, a lot of people, 20 people maybe in the country office who know a lot, who can possibly, you know, like work with you for helping you, at least to think out how to get into the programs. If it makes sense for the IDB, the projects or the entrepreneurs, or if it's better with another network, that for sure we can talk about.
Thank you for that question, Diego, and we'll bring in the comments in a few minutes. From the part about the network, it's usually underestimate that value. So we appreciate that. That's an opportunity for us to get acquainted and utilize it. From my experience, the IDB not necessarily is in direct contact with entrepreneurs to help them. I mean, they also most of the time there's a program, and through that program, you would be able to entrepreneurs would be able to. No, I wouldn't say help, but they would be able to grow, depending on the program, of course. Which brings me to the comment that one of our from our live audience, from Daphne. Daphne, thank you for this question. So she uses coconut oil in her skincare products. Her company is called Shin Naturals. So she makes a lot of her products from natural ingredients, and she says she's not good at planting more trees, or we are not good at planting more trees, constant production of coconut oil. This is definitely a concerning topic because I'm aware of someone in Suriname taking the lead and trying to empower communities to plant more coconuts. So there's a lack still there. We kind of underestimate the value of the coconut, which brings me to the next question: how do we put this? How can we make a conscious decision as a group? So not just three of us, as a group, for hey, we will develop the coconut industry because X, Y, and Z. There's potential in the a worldwide market for these by product demand. There is a potential for using it for internal import. Vervanging, what's the Dutch word, English word?
Substitute.
Replacement. Yeah, substitute. But also taking account the bioeconomy innovation mindset or the success formula. So yeah, how would we be able to? Do you have? Maybe the question should be: is there an example where we've utilized this approach in a country where we decided, hey, we're gonna use this one and develop this nationwide?
It's not an easy question. So I don't have the only answer to it, but I would look into it's financial, it's called 𝗲𝗲. I can send it to you. It's called 𝗲𝗲. It's called 𝗲𝗲, yeah. So 𝗲𝗲 was an initiative which was built, which was created in Amazonas in Brazil, which is originated from a conversation like this. So it originated from a lot of young, innovative startups asking themselves the same question. So how can we, as an innovative group, as a new ecosystem from the region, organize ourselves to get a good finance, to get the possibility of finance, and how can we help ourselves to be able to work as an ecosystem? And you should look at, I don't have it now, the correct address to it, but I can send it later. But probably if you look at it into Google,
We'll Google it.
Yeah, you'll Google it. And this could be an interesting conversation. Maybe one of the persons who is responsible for 𝗲𝗲, who is Mariano Semano, he could come and talk to you. And maybe he can have a better answer of that. So they're originally from the third sectors. They are an NGO. They started as an NGO in Amazonas called 𝗜ጵ. And then they started working with products, with different types of products. And they started seeing that there was this ecosystem which wasn't really integrated, which was having difficulties in accessing credit, that the credit they needed wasn't the big credit as a bank like mine, like IDB, but it was a specific small credit with a specific characteristic for them to start. And they created this 𝗲𝗲. And I think it's interesting. It's new. I think it has 1 or 2 years, maybe. I haven't been following it very closely, but I think this type of thing, I think if I was going to just give you an answer for this moment in Suriname, I think it would be very important to strengthen the ecosystem, to identify the people that are in this pursuit, bring them together and start working together, And I think all of you are going to have the same questions. All of you have been thinking about it for more time. And maybe you can start building strategies. And with building strategies, one of them is looking around and seeing what type of financial or technical help is more adequate to the moment you're in. Because one of the problems when we start working with bioeconomy is that there's a lot of financial possibilities. But many times these financial possibilities aren't adequate to the size and the moment the small enterprises or the entrepreneurs are in. So you have to map it again and understand what would be a good financial or technical support for what you need now to help you grow, so that it doesn't break you. Because the other problem with financial help, it can break you. And before you even start, being more stable. So you have to think about that. And I think this is something we could surely work on, is how to support the strengthening of an innovative ecosystem in Suriname, if we have a demand and if it looks promising, if we have a good group of people willing to do that.
Yeah, I think we hope to expand this group, and that's why I'm happy with the viewers we have with us and willing to also share this question. Because for the sake of time, thank you, Mike, for sharing your question. He says he's living in the bioeconomy. We sometimes don't see the value of it. Are there programs that educate or facilitate value creation that have worked in other similar economies? Okay, that's two big issues there.
Good. No, good. Very good. Yeah, I think this is a little bit of what the ecosystem can start doing and what you're doing, like calling people to talk to you, looking around at, especially in the Amazonian countries, surely I can help, of who you can call to talk about this in different perspectives. There has been educational possibilities, but I think as Suriname is very specific, everything has to be a little bit tailored for Suriname. You can't simply adopt what has been going on in other countries, but you have to know what has been going on, and you have to understand what worked in the other countries and what didn't work in the other countries. And then what's your input? What is good? Your input is to say, okay, in Suriname, if we think about the economic culture of the country, what will work in the short run? Because sometimes we want to go too quickly to the long run. Yeah, what will work in the short run so that we can start things? We need quick gains in bioeconomy. And I like the other comment on coconut oil. That's perfect comment. And I think not only coconut oil, but we do have the Suriname has a very big potential in all native palm tree oils, because I saw the production of, I don't know the name in Surinamese, I think it's Inajá palm tree, which is also good for the palm heart, but the women were processing the coconut and making coconut oil from Inajá. I had never seen that in Brazil. I was very happy to see the oil, and it seemed as if the oil has a lot of properties. And it has properties for cosmetics, and it has properties for pharmaceutical. So I think there's an interesting world to look at. And also all the other areas which we haven't been discussing. For example, we could talk about rice agriculture in Suriname, right?
Yeah. I asked myself, why haven't we innovated across the
Yeah.
existing products we have for 20 years?
Yeah,
Why
exactly.
aren't we innovating with the different products? But
Yeah.
okay. Diego, looking at the time, did you have a immediate question?
I think we could go on for another hour or so, but for the sake of it, I'm going to hold off. I think that's a good place to end with Michael's question on, the value creation and valid point. Like, yes, we
You
need to
don't
know
see the
what's happening.
value.
Yeah, what's happening out there, but you can't just copy paste it. I think because each area has its own unique challenges, even though it's relatively similar, but you need to adapt.
Good.
I think we can go to the other takeaways from my side is that definitely we can, there are different paths we can explore within bioeconomy itself. We have to define it for ourselves. How will we, how will bio innovation and bioeconomy, how does our bioeconomy look like, and how can we mature it? We already know that there are categories, there are three categories, how we can look at it. We already know now that you should map the knowledge network. And we also realize that probably we have a strong potential with native palm / coconut trees, coconut type products. And we haven't explored other categories where we also have strong potential. So that's something we have to look into in the future. And I want to thank Tatiana for one. Hopefully, we can connect with other networks. The Amas example, but also the other examples that you mentioned. We'll do our homework and try to circle back. The good news is we have the IDB lab. Well, it's not official yet, but we have them scheduled in February.
Good.
On our webinar. Diego, I am really buzzing with so many ideas to move forward with energy. A lot of puzzle pieces that were so scattered are now coming together. Tatiana, do you have a closing remark for us?
Well, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you a lot. I really enjoyed. I'm sorry I couldn't give all the correct answers, and no one has all the correct answers. But please feel free to come back and let's talk more. The next time I'm in Suriname, for sure, I'll see if we can get together. Hopefully with the ecosystem, so that I can hear more. Then it's going to be my turn to ask questions, and then maybe I can think better with you. Because as I said, we have to listen, and I would love to listen to each one of you individually so that we can create, so we can think of a strategy together. I think that's very important. And I do hope you persist, because I think that's what we have to do now. We have to persist. So thank you for the invitation.
Diego, what's the famous saying we also use in Silicon Dorp?
I'm not sure what you're
Well, no,
referring to
no.
there.
I'll help you. I'll help you. One of the saying is it's not a sprint but a marathon. So we'll definitely persist. And the reason why we're also doing it is the best time to plant the tree is it was 10 years ago. The second best time is now.
Yeah.
To conclude that, thank you again, Tatiana, for your time. Also to the IDB to make you available to talk to us. And I want to thank Diego as well. Thank you for everyone listening. I think we can say till the next session in 2 weeks.
Okay.
Have a good day.
Have a
Bye.
good day, Suriname. Bye-bye.